founder of ACG Book Publicity. Alyssia's clients have been featured in publications such as the Los Angeles Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Review of Books, Alta Journal, Publishers Weekly, and several more. She lives in Los Angeles. Please give Alyssia a round of applause. We also have with us today from Houston, Texas, Jasminne Mendez, best-selling Dominican-American poet, educator, translator, playwright, and the award-winning author of several books for children and adults. She has poetry and essays published in numerous journals and anthologies, and is the author of 2 multi-genre collections, including Island of Dreams by Floricanto Press, which won an International Latino Book Award. Her debut poetry collection, City Without Altar, was a finalist for Noemi Press Poetry Prize and was released in August 2022. And her debut middle grade novel in verse, Aniana del Mar Jumps In, will be published by Dial this coming November. Welcome, Jasminne. Very excited about all your books. And our third panelist is Julia Callahan, who started her publishing career in the Book Soup Annex at age 22, where she went on to run events for 4 years. In 2010, she left Book Soup for Rare Bird Books, a downtown LA-based publishing and literary publicity company, where she spent 10+ years building the company and working on editorial, marketing, PR, and everything in between. She was a sales rep for Independent Publishers Group for 2 years and is now a sales rep for Hatchett Book Group. Please welcome Julia, Alyssa, and Jasminne. Thank you all for being here. I've asked each of the panelists to start, and Julia, we'll start with you, and then Jasminne, and then Alyssa, just to kind of give us your overall approach for book promotion, maybe like your top few kind of approaches that you would take for book promotion.
Absolutely. Well, first, just thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be here and to talk to you guys. So I would say that my first thing that I always tell authors when I don't care where you're being published at, whether you're self-publishing, whether you're with, Penguin Random House, whether you're with a big publisher, whether you're with an indie, think about what you want for your book. And I mean that, everyone's like, oh, the New York Times bestseller list. And I'm like, no. Think about what do you want for this book? Are you trying to build a career? Are you trying to build community around your writing and your art? Are you trying to get the word out about whatever topic you're writing about? What's the goal for this book? And then start to arrange how you're promoting around that. Because I think when people have something kind of nebulous and totally out of their control, like the New York Times bestseller list, you're just setting yourself up to be really disappointed and for to feel like a failure. And I think that there's a lot of books that are extremely successful in whatever way you want to sort of think about success that are not New York Times bestsellers. And that doesn't mean that they're not successful books. They're not books that reach people. So I think that's kind of where I always start. And then I think about, I ask authors to think about what are the pieces of that you actually can control, because there's a lot of it that you can't control. And so making peace with that truth, I think those are my number one and number two. And then as you set out in trying to promote your books, in working with people and getting the word out in whatever way you're going to go about doing that, and we can sort of dig into that a little bit as we're talking, I think having those two things are very grounding and give you a thing to come back to always. Okay, is this part of me achieving this goal? And is this something I can control? For me personally right now, I'm a sales rep. And so what that means as an author is that you have this person that you've never met, that you don't have any contact with, and I'm the one selling your book to a bookstore. And there's nothing you can do to control what I'm doing or how I'm selling it. That's my company trusts me to do that work. And so reminding yourself that there are a lot of people, working on your book, if you're with sort of a publishing house, big or small, there's a lot of people working on your book that you're not seeing all of the efforts being done. I think allows you to sort of say like, okay, I can't control all of this. So what can I control? What is in my hands? So those are my top two sort of things to think about.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that, Julia. Jasminne, what about you?
Yeah, there's so much I could say, and then I'd want to tell you. Obviously, all of us here have that. So I have been published by both indie presses, university presses, and now a big five. So Aniana actually came out in March, and so I've been in that realm. And I've also published for adults, and I've published for children, and both I've learned kind of wildly different. There are things that are similar with both, but your audience, right? So my first tip before I even get into audience is your marketing and publish and like promotion for your work and you as a writer starts long before the book gets published, your first book, second book, whatever it is. And what I mean by that is you need to start building community now. You need to start establishing who are your people, who's in your corner, who is your critique group, who is in your open mic space, where are the classes, the retreats, the groups, find your people, because those people, especially if you're with an indie press or you're self-publishing, are going to be the ones that are going to help you champion and push out your book into the spaces that you want. Because the truth is, even with my fancy bio, I've had readings where 4 people showed up, right? And it's not a great feeling. So, and that's just kind of how it goes, right? Some, usually when I launch a book, I can have 150 people there, right? But again, that comes from years and years and years of me building my community here in Houston and across the state of Texas. I have groups that I'm a part of and that I've also helped create that have built my community. So that's one of the first big things that I tell folks. It's just because we write in isolation and we think this is a very solitary art form, find your people, build your community, get out there. Don't be afraid, get out there. And you can find people anywhere and whatever. Do you play capoeira? Are you also a visual artist? Are you a dancer? Those are also the people that can help support and champion your book, right? A lot of the people that have helped me put my book out there are not writers themselves. They just love the stories I tell. They love me, or they love what I'm trying to do with my work. And so they're out there pumping out my books and helping me, right? And support me in that way. The next big thing, which a lot of people sometimes want to cringe about, you need to establish some kind of online presence. I'm not saying go on and be on all the social medias. We know things are changing. They're constantly kind of evolving. Twitter has collapsed in on itself. Okay, fine. Maybe that's not a viable place for you to start, but at minimum, you need a website. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to have anything super, a photo, a short bio, and anything you've published or worked on or are working on, interests. People need to be able to find you. They need to be able to find links for you. They need to be able to know more about you. Whatever it is, it could just be a very basic, Squarespace or whatever those free platforms are. Just find it. Get a buddy to help you, slap a picture on there, a bio, and 1 or 2 other fun facts, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be, especially if you're just starting out. But if you have a book coming out and it, it's in the queue and it's getting published, next month, next year, get those links up there, get some blurbs up there, get any kind of press that you already have on that website. That is huge. I always get people when I do events, where can we buy your books? Where can we buy your books? I send them to my website, directly to my website. And there's links on there that will take you to wherever, bookshop.org, penguinrandomhouse.com, whatever it is, to be able to buy those books. And then, the other social media presence is kind of up to you, but if you're going to be with a bigger publisher or even an indie press, they are going to suggest either Instagram or Facebook, some kind of something that establishes you out there in the world and building, again, those connections, that community. So many of the people that are part of my community don't even live in the state of Texas. Most of them are in New York or in California, etc. Right? And I've met them all online or through other retreats, and then we stay connected online. And when I post something about a book, or a press release that came out or a news article, they're sharing it. They're sharing it in their circles. They're sharing it, I don't have a super ton of followers, but I have friends who have a lot of followers. And if they repost something that I shared, that helps my sales. That helps people get to know me, because Elizabeth Velasquez, who has 40,000 followers, suddenly shared something about my book. So now her followers know about my book, right? And so those are the kinds of things that I think are really important. And then, finally, I would say know your audience and who, again, try to figure out, and I've had to learn this all on the go. Nobody taught me. There were no workshops like this when I was first starting out. So indie and adult, like fiction, nonfiction, poetry, I take a different strategy for who and how I promote those books than I have for children's publishing. Like children's publishing is all about schools, teachers, educators, librarians, and yeah, bookstores as well. But like really, librarians have become my best friends. Okay. So like, whereas when I was doing adult and like my nonfiction and my poetry, yes, librarians were kind of there, but it wasn't even really like, it didn't cross my mind. I was like indie booksellers, my people, my friends, colleges and universities. If you can get your books taught in colleges and universities, that can be a really big like thing for you, right? Like your work gets out there in more ways. So I'm going to stop there because I'm not the only one talking today, but those are kind of like my big top 3 tips, I would say.
Thank you, Jasmine. That's great. I really appreciate that. And I saw in the chat, I was clapping for librarians. Some of my dearest friends are librarians, and I know there are probably several in the audience, both physically and on Zoom. Thank you. Alyssia, you want to share your overall approach with us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to echo a lot of what Julia and Jasmine said, like knowing what your goal is as an author, like that's super important. I know one person I talked to recently, they were like, my goal with hiring a publicist was to get a second book deal. So everything that they focused on was really to make sure that that author could, get another book deal and keep doing this. And so in that case, it's like branding, it's really focusing on, again, like your online presence. I was going to say a website is huge, your social media, like it's big. You want to make sure that you're, branded across everything you have control of, which I think we'll talk about more later. But so social media, Amazon, your author page, Goodreads, all of those types of things. And then I guess after that, I would start looking at the book itself and brainstorm everything you can about it. What's newsworthy about it? What universal themes is it connecting with? Where are people talking about these things, and who's talking about this? So how could we go find them? Does that person do reviews on these types of books? Maybe they're interested in this one. And then just various opportunities, events. What does the author like doing? Do you like doing events and readings, or do you not? Would you rather do things that were more like written articles? Like, it's trying to explore every angle is my first step, and then breaking it down after that. Yeah, and I feel like everything else has kind of been said.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Jasmine, I see that you added in the chat about knowing your elevator pitch for your book. I see that as something, one of the questions that I had for the panelists was about what exactly can the author control and what should they prioritize? And I think the elevator pitch would be one of those things. Would you agree, Jasmine? And maybe say a little bit more about if you have any strategies for like how you created yours or what helped you with that.
Yeah, so usually, and again, this varies from publisher to publisher, but at least all the ones that I've been with, Arte Público, Noemi Press, and Dial, they will send you, I forgot the exact name, like author survey basically. And so it's all these questions of who you know, what contacts you have, what are some comp titles, so what are books that are similar to yours in theme, character, age. There's different ways that you can create sort of your ideal list of like, these are the kinds of books that are similar to mine for whatever reason. And on Noemi's one specifically, well, even in the Penguin one, they had asked for like 3 different types of summaries, right? Like a short, give us a 2-sentence summary, give us a 1-paragraph summary, give us like a longer, 2 or 3 paragraph description of your book. And so that really helped me kind of succinctly say, my book is about this character with this problem, and this is like a major theme, right? So kind of breaking it down. Or this poetry collection is about these 3 things, these 3 big ideas, and like a tie-in sentence at the end to kind of bring it all together, right? Before, for a while, what helped me was actually trying to create sort of those like 140 character tweets or whatever. Like if I had to condense the description of my book into a tweet, what would it be? And so that really forced me to kind of like include the main ideas, like figuring out a way to, connect with readers, right? Like for Aniana del Mar, it's a middle grade novel in verse about a young Dominican-American swimmer who gets diagnosed with juvenile idiopathic arthritis. Like, okay, there's an issue. She's a swimmer, right? And there's longer ones to talk about her relationship with her mom, et cetera. But like, how can I succinctly say, like, this is what this book is about? And if you're pitching to an agent, or you're pitching to your agent's going to pitch to your editor, you're already going to have a lot of that kind of already established. Granted, it could change as your book evolves and gets edited, et cetera. But at least, if you're trying to write those query letters or pitch to an agent or pitch to an editor, they're going to ask you for that anyway. So it's really important that you have that kind of set to go already in your mind right away, that elevator pitch. And then once the book is published and you're out there doing events and readings, people might ask you like, well, what is your book about? And you've got 30 seconds maybe to like get them in hooked to say it. And you can't sort of like fumble and be like, well, it's about. I still do that too, because sometimes I get caught off guard. You're at a shindig and be like, what do you do for a living? I'm a writer. What do you write? All the things. You kind of get tongue tied. But it's, if you're specifically kind of trying to promote and talk about that one book, then have that, 2 to 3 sentence summary. Especially, if it's a novel, thinking about the character, their conflict, some kind of resolution or like theme or big idea, hope. What is that thing that's going to kind of really reel in your audience? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that and say I think that's all correct. And also the way I sell books is about feeling. So like, what does this book make you feel? Because listen, like, I don't know about you, but like 9 times out of 10, I don't care about the plot of the book. I'm like, yeah, great. But how are you going to make me feel while I'm reading this book? So the way that I sell to bookstores, the way that I sell when I'm selling to the buyers at bookstores is like, this book feels like this feels like coming of age. This feels like, oh my God, it's so, like, it feels like that moment in a Cure song where you're like 14 and driving around all night and, excited and whatever. And so I think that like making sure what the feelings in your book are and I like what you were saying at the end, Jasmine, the idea of hope, like what are the ideas? Because like plot is great. And I think as an author, when you're asked that question, like that is what people are looking for. Like, tell me what the book is actually about. And I think some authors get bogged down because they're like, well, there's all these plot lines and there's this plot line and there's this plot. And it's like, no, nobody, no offense, but nobody needs that. They're going to either read the book or not. And so thinking about like the ideas that you're exploring in your book, that actually really hooks people in, because, they're going to judge whether or not how you've plotted out a book is good or whether they like it when they read it, but they're looking for like, what am I gonna be experiencing while I read this book? And so I think thinking about that, and thinking about how you distill that into a very short sort of like, here's what I was questioning, here's what I was working through when I was thinking about this book. Like that kind of stuff is what hooks a lot of readers in, is like, oh, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. And so that really does pull people in.
I think it's a great addition, Julia. Thank you. And when both of you were explaining that, it took me back to when I first started saying, oh yeah, I have a book coming out in December, and people would ask, what's it about? And I would be like, and what I've realized recently, as December's getting closer, is my pitch changes, that blurb I give changes depending on who the audience is. I usually have to explain a little bit more about junior rodeo competition if I'm talking to people from Los Angeles who've never seen a horse before, right? My students in South LA are like, wait, you did what? You used to do what? But if I'm back in the town where I went to high school and I'm like, oh, it's about a girl who loves horses more than people. And they're like, oh yeah, we get that. That's all I have to say. And they're like, yeah, that's because the audience, I think, one of you mentioned earlier, like talking about audience, Jasmine, I think you said like that, I think has a lot to do with how we approach, as Julia said, different for the bookstore than if you're talking to people. So I love that. I love it. Alyssia, anything you want to add about that, about the pitch or other things that the author can be in control of going forward, just kind of in general, or anything specific you want to add about what the author should prioritize?
Prioritize, maybe not so much. When Julia was speaking, I was thinking about my own questionnaire that I give out that the publishers also do, so you can, organize everything for yourself. Like, who am I connected with? What bookstores do I want to have an event at? Do I know anyone there? Like that huge questionnaire. One of the important ones to me is like the book section of that is, why did I write this? Because you're going to get asked that a lot. And your answer is, it's very personal, but other people might find it very personal as well. And so it relates back to that feeling and how that's a very important part of pitching your book. So, you might not question why while you're doing it, but afterwards, that why matters a lot.
There's a question, since all of you mentioned, or at least two of you mentioned about the kind of presence that we want to have on social media, having a website. I just kind of want to hear, Alyssia, we'll start with you here. Like, what have you found in your experience to be the most effective social media channels to use, maybe for different things? What kind of strategies? And one of my things that a lot of people who've been with us at Women Who Submit for a long time know, I'm a compulsive scheduler. My calendar, this is not my calendar, but it looks like this. It's a little book. I write everything down. I schedule things out ahead of time. And so for me, I'm thinking about, is there some kind of strategy I can use for scheduling certain posts on certain channels? Am I even using the word channels right? I don't know if that's what you call them. That's what I call them. Certain social media platforms on certain days, or what kinds of things to post on the different platforms. So, and any of you could speak to that, Alyssia, and then Julia and Jasmine. I think that would be interesting for our audience to know about.
Yeah, I think social media is like always a huge struggle. And one of the best like notes that I've heard about it to balance what you're going to post is, keep it 1/3 personal, 1/3 promotional, and 1/3 events. And I like that the last one's events. And the promotional and events part isn't just about you, it's also about your community. So it's very much, you're part of this community, and we want to see you support others and not constantly have to say, look at what I did. Yeah, my book's on sale again. My book's on sale again. It's like, well, here's my friend's book and here's an amazing thing about them, and you should go to this event or whatever. I think this balance has been very helpful for people, because you'll think, throughout the week, is my week balanced with these types of posts? So that, and then if you don't enjoy a certain social media, I always tell an author just to literally ignore it. Don't even have an account there, because we can tell that you don't want to tweet. We can tell you don't want to post these pictures on Instagram. Like, just stick with whatever social media that you actually enjoy posting on, because it's going to reflect with your engagement, and engagement, really matters on any platform. I know a lot of people are trying to break into TikTok. If you don't like TikTok or want to do that, then don't feel pressured to do it. But yeah, that's everything that I feel about social media. I personally always struggle with it, and it's very like case by case, but at least balancing out the types of posts you do might help.
Yeah, I want to second that. I used to tell, when I was the PR director at Rarebird, I would tell authors, if you do not want to do this, do not do it, because you're going to be annoyed that you have to do it. And then you're going to not be like tweeting or posting on Facebook things that like are at all helpful. And then you're going to be mad that you don't have any followers. And we're all going to be annoyed because I'm going to have to hear about this. And like, let's just not do this. Like, let's build community in a different way. So I would be remiss if I didn't say that having a social media following on some platform is very helpful. But also, if you don't want to do it, please don't do it, because it's just frustrating. And it's frustrating to you. So my thing is like, and I want to just like reiterate what Alyssia was saying, like, if there's a certain kind, like a lot of people hate Twitter. I personally love Twitter, but a lot of people hate it. I can tell if you're just here because you feel like you need to be here, and any interaction you're having is really like, you don't care about any of this. And that's like not helpful at all. And then you're just wasting your time, you know, and time you could be spent doing something else. So I think about like, but I think if you're not doing social media, you need to think about community in a different way and how you're building community in a different way. Because the thing about social media is that it's very easy to build community on social media. And I think that's why a lot of people like it and a lot of people do it, is it's very, you know, I can sit in my like, you know, shorts and my tank top on my couch and like have conversations with people while I'm like drinking wine and just laying around and doing nothing. And like, that's kind of awesome, right? I don't have to get dressed. I don't have to go out. I don't have to meet people. I don't have to like do all these things. And for me, sometimes that's the way to go, but sometimes it's not the way to go. And I think for some people, it's not the way to go. For some people, they want, you know, to be in like face to face and in person, and that's great. And like, do that, build that community that way. And Women Who Submit is a great like way to start that community. And like, I think it's a great community to kind of build out from. And like, so you're already like have one foot in this door of building community. So just think about that. And think about also, you know, when you're building community, one of the things that you're so lucky about, whether it's online or in person, is that because we're talking about books and writing, like you already have a topic to start conversations with people. So like, use it, you know, use that stuff to sort of build connections with people. You know, so yeah, that's my thoughts on social media.
Thank you. Jasmine, anything you want to add?
So many things. No, so exactly everything that Alyssia and Julia are saying. If it's not for you and you're just dreading it, people can tell, right? Like we know, like I know when someone's faking it. I know when someone's like forcing it, or when they're, you know, and some people are just awkward on social media. Don't get me wrong. Like some people are awkward in real life, not awkward on social media. And like, that's them, right? Like that's their brand. That's fine. For me, so social media and I are like that, you know, relationship, that off and on again relationship that you have that sometimes can become a little toxic. And so then you're like, okay, we're breaking up right now. Right now, social media and I have broken up for the month of August because I'm taking a break and I'll be back. But so the four-ish kind of that I've toggled back and forth on, and it's Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And I'll just very briefly kind of talk about each one in different ways. So Twitter, before it was what it is now, which I don't use literally like at all, because it's like, to me, I'm just like, this is it's completely useless for me now. Like I'm not connected. The algorithm has made me not see anybody that I want to see their posts. Like I had a huge Twitter community of writers predominantly, and educators and academics. And I used to love being on there. And when I was doing 5 a.m. writing, I had a huge, you know, people really loved my 5 a.m. writing posts. Like I'm up at 5 a.m. I'm writing. What are you up to? And that was like my thing. That was how I kind of was like building community and was able to stay engaged. Now, it's just something else. And so I get on it like once a week and just see. And if anyone's tagged me on something, then I repost it, I reshare it, I say thank you, I like a couple people's posts, and I'm off. TikTok, I was on really big for about a year and making videos all the time. And I loved it. I had a lot of fun. And then I just kind of got tired and I was like, yeah, I'm over it. But I love TikTok. I really do. I just kind of go through phases because it also takes a lot of my creative energy to create TikToks. And I'm like, this is time that I should be using to write. So let me not spend 4 hours making 3 TikToks when I should be writing. So that's kind of where, but I do want to get back into it. I just haven't had kind of like the bandwidth for it. And I will say that Instagram has kind of been where I have like stayed and really kind of felt that for my book things and my events and even my life stuff is where I've gotten the most engagement since I've been off of Twitter. Because I used to get a lot of engagement on Twitter and then I've kind of moved away from it. But Instagram is where I get a lot of my engagement. And I will say that similar to what Alyssia is saying is that like kind of vary it, right? Like you don't want to only promote your books all the time, 24/7, and that's all people see all the time. Unless that's the only reason for your account. But I feel like I definitely get more engagement when I'm like, this is me and my family at the beach, and they see cute pictures of my daughter and they're like, oh my God, she's so cute, right? Or when I'm talking about events or sharing other people's events, because I'm very big on that as well, like making sure that I'm resharing and reposting what my friends are doing, what my writing colleagues are doing, what events there are going on in town in Houston, keeping people aware and just being what I call like a good literary citizen. Like I'm just being a part of this community. This is who I am a part of, and I'm supporting and celebrating their work as much as I would like them to celebrate me. And so then speaking of celebrations, things that get a lot of engagement usually are like my unboxing video, like, look at me, I just got it, my book came in and I'm so excited, and being like really authentic. Because I've also seen videos where I'm like, okay, somebody forced you to do that. And you look really awkward and unhappy to be doing this right now. So you want it to be authentic to you and to your personality and to what you feel comfortable doing. So things like an unboxing video or a cover reveal or the day your book comes out, those kind of big moments tend to get people like excited for you and supportive, and you get that engagement and you get those likes and, the comments and all of those things. And that can make you feel really good, right? And you kind of do want to try to highlight those moments because it is building up to the release of your book, right? Like the cover reveal and the unboxing and maybe you got like somebody, an article that got posted, or you got to write an article to help talk about your book, and you want to kind of try to share those things, or your book made it onto a list of like best audiobooks of the season. Like you want to like share those things, you want to post those things, create links for them so that people are in tune with what you've got going on. But again, also balance that out with like the mundane and the personal, or just like a little bit of like, this is my writing space. People also like to kind of know about you, right? And what you're doing as a writer. So maybe you take a picture of a corner of your office and like, this is where I brainstorm or daydream, or this is where, this building inspired the scene of this book, right? Kind of giving even tidbits and information about what they can expect in your writing or in your book or about your characters. Folks really kind of dig that stuff. They're like, oh, cool. I like to know the process of writing, right? And how you got into your process. And I found that things like that have kind of is what I also enjoy doing. But again, do what works for you and what feels authentic for you. Because people can tell when it's not, authentic.
I do have to say that, yes, I have loved watching Jasmine's daughter grow up on social media, because I knew Jasmine before the child was born, and was so excited when the child's father as well, right? And so just to see this, and she is amazing. Like I'll be laughing and I feel like I know her, even though we've actually never met in person. So yes, I will echo that is also very engaging, and I appreciate that very much. I will also add, one of the things that I realize is I love that Instagram will let me share it also to Facebook, because I feel like that it's like a twofer, right? And I've noticed, I don't know if the three of you, or if anybody in the audience has noticed this, if they have both platforms, my Instagram followers tend to skew younger. I mean, it's us, right? It's writers of all ages, but outside of the writing community, it tends to be, I have a brother who's 20 years younger. The 20-year younger brother, so he's 30, his friends who are all like in the music world. I also have a brother who's 40, his friends all in that kind of music world. And then my nieces who are still in high school, my college niece isn't on anything, I don't think. She's on Goodreads, so I'm going to really tap into her for that. I heard Alyssia mention earlier Goodreads. So I think this younger, but my tias and tios and my high school friends are all still on Facebook. Like we have a whole class of 1990 Facebook group, and they're like already all like, wait, when are we getting Tisha's book again? So I think understanding like the demographics of who you're reaching on these different, even though right now I mostly post the same thing in both places, I feel like as I'm moving forward, I kind of want to think about how I change those a little bit, because I'm now starting to understand better the audience in each of those places. So my last question, and then I see there's some questions in the chat, and I'll open it up to all of you, and we'll get to those in about 10 minutes. My last question is about the dreaded thing, especially for those of us who are on a really strict budget, about the money, right? And so the question that I asked the panelists was, how much should an author expect to invest in book promotion? And I know it's different if you're the big 5 presses might have a budget for that. If you're self-published versus if you're with an indie press that might offer you some kind of promotional money. And I'm thinking about like, I had a friend who was like, you need to do all these things, like buy yard signs. And I'm like, why would I do that? That in my brain, posting yard signs, there's no place where I would put yard signs that would be very cost effective because they're not cheap. But she had other great ideas. And then my sister, so thinking about like what kinds of things, I don't know what you call the things, the things that you touch that you can have, your swag. I think there's like swag. Yeah. Having those kinds of things, like how much, and then what kinds of things should we avoid spending time and money on? If you have any suggestions in those areas, I think that would be appreciated.
Okay, this is going to be controversial. And it depends on what your goals are and what you want. And it depends on what your financial situation is. But I have heard varying things, and I personally don't recommend hiring an outside publicist, only because they have depleted some of my friends of their savings, and the like an independent publicist and sort of the payoff. And this is not to hate on them. I'm sure they do wonderful and great work, but I think that there's things that you can do on your own or figure out or maybe use them for a small scale of like, help me craft a press release and do X, Y, and Z, rather than like a full on scale, like publicist, like whole publicity campaign, et cetera. Like from what I've heard and what I've known of just a handful of friends that have done it, what they got in, like the return on investment was not that great personally. Just this is from what I've heard. Again, no hate or shade on them. I'm sure they're doing wonderful jobs. I just think publishing and book publishing and marketing is such a like, I don't know, it's a difficult space that I think even some of the larger publishers, from what I've heard, are struggling with to figure out, right? Like book talk is supposed to be a big thing, but a lot of publishers don't really know what to do or how to handle book talk, or what does that mean for sales, or how do we tap into it? How do we make the most use of it? Again, this is just from an author's perspective, not on that side. I don't necessarily know what goes on behind the scenes with PR and marketing. So for me, I would say there's a lot of things you can do that are free, like figuring out Canva, and even the most basic like non-paid subscription, right? For Canva, you can create little graphics with the book cover, information, slap it on to Instagram, Twitter, and just kind of, or having someone help you figure out how to do that, right? How to create simple online graphics. Back in the day when you used to have to do mail outs, right? Like that costs money. Canva, posting on social media, doesn't cost any money. I will say that a lot of the things that I've spent probably a little more money on to get my book out there is, like taking, for the indie presses in particular, who don't have the budget to send me to book festivals and things like that, is like, I'm paying my way to get to the book festival. And I try to do those in places where like, hey, I'm going to sleep on my sister's couch for the weekend. All I got to pay for is gas and my food while I'm there, and I make it happen. In other cases, now that I have more of a name for myself, like most of those events, I'm doing where in conjunction with like a school visit. So the school visit pays me money, and that helps cover some of the offset the costs of the book festival that weekend or what have you, right? Or I'm able to sell books on top of whatever small stipend they're going to give me. And so that evens out the cost, right? It just kind of depends on where you kind of are in that process. And again, what budget your people have, right? Your publicist, your publisher, and their marketing department. Again, I've worked with both. Usually what's worked well for me is that I know what it is that I want or need for that particular book. And so I talk to my publisher and I say, this is what I would like to have happen. We either have that conversation, or I tell them like, please send my book to this award category that's happening, and they'll do it, right? So that I don't have to put out that money. Because a lot of people don't know is that it costs money to submit your books for these awards. Lots of money, admission fees, 5 copies of the book, 10 copies of the book. That's money, that's dollar signs. If you can avoid having to do that yourself and see if your publisher can do it for you and is willing to incur those costs for you, it doesn't hurt to ask, right? And so in almost every single case that I've asked, it has been done for me, right? Through the publisher. I've been fortunate in that way. I've spent very little on swag. I think mostly for my children's books, I've bought my own bookmarks. And for like 500 of them, I've paid like maybe $100, $150. So little things like that I didn't feel were like a bad investment. I felt like it was useful. Kids like them, librarians like them, educators like them. Bookmarks are easy. They come in a couple of days and make them happen fairly quickly. But have an idea of what you would like. And again, if you're not being self-published, if you're doing it either an independent press or even a big 5, ask, say, I don't know what the budget is, or can you tell me what our budget is? These are the things that I would like. What can you actually make happen? And negotiate with that, and then see what you would like to try and do. I've also made like little note cards for when I'm at book festivals that just have like my bio, a little summary of the book cover, my bio, ways to contact me, and I hand those out, at different book festivals to librarians, to educators, to readers, and things like that. And I feel like that's been helpful for people to be able to like communicate and contact me afterwards. And yeah, bookmarks can serve as business cards. Yeah, I always have my website, my social media, and my name on the bookmarks. Even if I just give them to kids, like that information is there. So those are my tips, but I could be totally off base.
Thanks, Jasmine. And I think I was always leery about like my book's coming out with independent press, but I do know someone in our group that had a very positive experience with their publicist, and I've bugged Alyssia numerous times about other people that might be interested. Alyssia, can you talk a little bit about the different things that you offer? Because I've been on your website, and I think it offers such a great variety that people might want to know about what you're offering.
Yeah. Cool. I'm glad you see my website. It's working. And I'm going to second what Jasmine said. One of the things to not waste your money on is an independent publicist. If you don't know why you want them or what you want to accomplish, that is just going to be a big waste of money. And so really, it's a really big investment. So you really want to know like what you want out of that. But if you do work with one, and you know what your goal is, like your goal is to help establish your career, or you do want a lot of sales, which you have to always understand, there's no guarantees in anything. The publicist is going to be able to help you, schedule out your whole campaign from, whenever you start, which is hopefully at least a few months before your book comes out. Past that, they're going to help you, support you with your events. They're going to help support the various places that you are getting interviewed by. They're going to make sure things get followed up with. Then they're going to help probably brainstorm things that you might not have thought of, because they do have that foot in the publishing world and in media. So they just know what's popular right now, what people want to write about, what people want to read about. Sorry, what else were you asking about? My what other things they could just consult
Like
with you. You
I
don't
know
have
that
to
you
hire
offer like a
them.
variety of services. It's not like for different budget levels. So I thought that was kind of important.
Yeah. So it's kind of like trying to offer a DIY thing where you can hire some publicists will just do a press release. I think Jasmine mentioned that, where they'll help you with getting that press release. So it's like a solid pitch that you could just give. And here's the story for somebody who could just, pull all the important information out of here, everything you need about the book, everything you need to know about the author, and any ties it has to just big newsworthy things or hot topics. So I have the press release. There's just a consultation where you can just talk with somebody about your book, about everything that you have done. Thank you, Tony Ann. How everything you've done in the past and how you could use that to support yourself in the future. Everything is very, situational. Everything's very situational. Are you writing fiction, nonfiction, poetry, memoir? Like everything is so different. Every conversation I've had has been so different. And one of the other options is just coming together and doing that whole plan and giving you the plan to go execute, where, here's everything we brainstormed. Here's every person that we talked about contacting, every place we talked about contacting. Here are the pitches for you the templates anyways, so you can personalize them. It's very important to not just blanket send a pitch to a bunch of people, because it might not matter to them. You need to know why you're reaching out to somebody. You want to establish a relationship, not just go to the spam folder, yeah, I think everything's a little nuanced and situational for each thing, but the basics.
Good, thank you. Julia, go ahead, Julia.
Yeah, I just, I'll be short since I know we want to open it up to questions, but I want to reiterate, like, I do think that depending on budget, and again, back to the thing that I said, the first thing that I said, which is like, know what you want to do with the book. Yeah, sure. Like, I do think an outside publicist can work. I think for indie presses, I spent 10 years as the head of PR and marketing at an indie press. I was the entire PR and marketing department for 50 books a year for a long time. So understand that, like, that means that I was not able to do everything that I wanted to do with every book. I just couldn't, I didn't have the time. And so for indie presses, sometimes that can be helpful to have just another person in your corner. You know, you don't have to do that though. So, you know, working with your PR person or your marketing person at that press, if you're doing that, if you're like at an indie press and saying like, can we, basically what Alyssia just said, can we put together a plan, and then the author will go execute part of that plan or most of that plan. But just so we're all on the same page, I think that's very helpful. I think also at a bigger publisher too, you know, there's a lot of ifs. In the big five, I mean, I think, you know, what some people forget is that mid-list authors, so not the huge names that like the second that they're like, I've written a book, like everything kind of like starts working and churning and all the wheels start going. If you're a mid-list publisher or like author, sometimes they're kind of like, okay, it's not that there's not a PR person working on your book, it's that they too have a huge stack of books, mid-list books that they're working on. They often don't have the time. You know, that's a problem with publishing that like we here in this room are not going to fix right now, but understand that it is a problem and know that like you are in charge of your book in a way that nobody else can be. Like if I'm your PR person, I don't care if you're hiring me, I don't care if I'm the PR person at your publisher, like I did not write this book. So I care. I want you to do well. I want you to find success, but I also have other things on my plate. So you are the steward of that book. You're the one that's going to care the most. You're the one that's going to, you know, I think of it kind of like in healthcare, like you have to be the one that's like, no, but I need this. And like, you know, I need you to hear that I need this. And you have to kind of be the person that's like, this is the direction that I want to go. And also be open to people saying like, I don't know if this is the direction that's going to work right now, but like, let's think about what direction we should go in. So I think knowing what you want and going for it, and then also being open to feedback from people who you're working with. I think those are all things that as you're promoting, think about. So it doesn't matter what your budget is. Some of those, you know, some things, big publicists can cost like tens of thousands of dollars. If you have that budget and you know exactly what you want out of that publicist, you know, maybe that's the route to go. But also, if you don't have that budget, okay, what can I afford? What do I want to budget for? I mean, I think some of the like kind of award stuff and stuff like that, like sometimes that's not worth it, the money, sometimes it is. So thinking about like what goals you're trying to achieve and what money you have to do it, and trying to make the most of that. I mean, I know that's kind of vague, but also like it really is case by case. It depends on what you're trying to do. So
I like that analogy of know your book like you know your own body. And I love that all three of you kept bringing it back to what is the goal, right? What is it that you as the author want to accomplish with your book? Because I think if you keep that in mind, right, it's kind of like when you're writing the narrative. I'm a fiction writer. So what does the character want? What does the character desire? You've got to bring all the choices back to that. And I think that's the same kind of thing that we have to do with our book promotion. So if anyone in the audience, I now am looking at everyone on Zoom, and there might be also questions, Lisa and Sochi, that might come from the physical audience. So we didn't really talk about how we're negotiating the two things, but And let's take one question from the Zoom first. Anybody want to raise their hand and ask Alyssia, Julia, or Jasmine a question that maybe didn't get answered, or something, a totally different topic that maybe we didn't address?
I saw one earlier when we were talking about social media, and I'll just address this very quickly. For me, any differences in how you use IG stories versus posts? I tend to, a lot of times I'll cross post all the things that I'll post on, like on an actual post, I will also share on stories. But I found because of, after Altadena del Mar came out, because it was with a bigger publisher, I felt like really exposed and really like everyone knows a lot about me. And so I've scaled back, and I now use stories mostly for those personal things that I don't want to live forever, like about my family or about, I'm on vacation or doing things that are more just like the personal fun stuff. Cause I know I know you can always access it, if it's on social media, it'll live there forever. But in my mind, at least it's gone, like it lives 24 hours and then it goes away. Where more permanent things like links to stuff or articles or events that are coming up or things that I'm still comfortable, like, sharing about my personal life, then I'll leave those as actual posts that people can access and find and see, versus the stories. I'm just kind of more like, this is the temporary, like fun stuff, etc. So that's kind of how I differentiate.
Thanks, Jasmine. Mona and Shonda, I see your hands. Mona, we'll start with you and then I'll take your question, Shonda.
Okay. I wanted to know how you get invited to book festivals, or do school presentations, or does the author solicit that?
It depends. For a lot of book festivals, you can sort of reach out. There's some that actually want you to like put together like, oh, I want to do this panel, and like you submit that. So I would really look into, depending on what book festival you're talking about, I would look into whether or not they're accepting that. You can always, there's a lot of them that will accept submissions, so you can submit yourself to those festivals. I'll let Jasmine, I think, take over for school visits because I don't know as much about that. I just sell books to people that are visiting schools.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a little bit of both. It's similar to the book festival situation. Yeah, I've had both happen where the publisher will submit a proposal or will pitch me for a book festival. And I've also done it to where I've submitted my own work, and both with indie and big five. Like, I'm in the throes of, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I've done both. I've submitted myself and my publisher submitted for me. For school visits, as a former teacher, I just have a lot of contacts. And so I'm able to reach out and say, you want me to come to your school? Can I come to your school, etc. And also, mind you, schools are a tricky thing. K through 12 schools are a tricky thing, and even colleges and universities, because of the rules they have about selling things on campus, not being able to sell things on campus. And now in Texas, things having to be vetted before you can sell books on campus. It's kind of a cluster F right now. But I've done it personally myself. I've also worked with specific organizations. Like here in Texas, we have Writers League of Texas, Project Wise, and a few other literary organizations that work with authors. Like you're part of kind of like their roster, and they will reach out to schools that will then say, oh yeah, we want Jasmine to come. And then I coordinate with the librarians or the educators to set up that time to go to the school. So it can work a variety of ways. I also have a speakers, I'm part of a speakers agency. And so my speaking agent, he will find especially universities or corporations or other people, and he'll negotiate those terms for me. Or if I have someone that reaches out directly to me through my website, Comcast, Centerpoint, whatever it is, I'll say, hey, please talk to my agent because he can negotiate that. And so it just kind of varies. It depends on where you are kind of in that journey. But as you're starting out, like I would say, make that list, find those contacts, see who you know personally in the schools, professors, educators, teachers, librarians, and see if you can come out. And starting out, you probably won't get paid, unfortunately, right? Like you may have to do a lot of freebies at first just to get your work out there. And then as you're doing more and more of them, asking for some kind of payment, because it is work, it is time, and it is, your time is valuable. So.
Okay.
At least
Thank you.
compensation for travel and whatnot too might be helpful. Shonda had a question, and then Lisa has a question from the live audience. Thank you both. Thanks, Mona.
Hello, ladies. Good morning. Quick question. I never thought to ask my my publisher this when my first book came out. But have you all come across PR people, marketing people who say, we love this social media, it's a favorite, a darling of the industry, and you must participate in the social media? And if yes, why? I know people love Twitter, some people love Instagram. I had a friend who worked for one of the big five, and his job was to go through people's social media to see if they even had a platform, if they were viable. So I'm really curious about that.
I think it's changed. I think there was a time that was like, people were like, yes, you must have this many Twitter followers. And like the end, that's it. It's like what we're going to look at. I don't think that that's true anymore. I think that people, and listen, I've learned this one the hard way more than once. Just because people have a big social media following does not mean that they can sell things. And so so social media I think of as community building, and I don't think of it as like guaranteed sales. I don't think that there's any one social media platform that is better than the others. I think it depends on how you're using it, and how you're building your community with it. I think that, and I think absolutely it does not have a effect on sales, except in certain instances. Some people are able to sell things through social media and some people aren't. And so it is very case by case. And I think publishers now really do know that. They've all learned it the hard way as well. So.
Thank you. Lisa has a question from the library, and then we'll wrap it up.
No, I need it.
I mean, you go ahead. Okay.
Oh,
Okay, well, so I'm part of the children's book community, and a lot of us get together to promote each other's books. I have an adult nonfiction book coming out soon, and I don't know of any adult community, book writers that get together to promote each other's book the same way. Or is there? Am I just not in the right space?
Did you all get that?
So the question was asking about like, if you've been in children's book writing spaces and then adult book writing spaces. I think that, I can just speak to the fact that Women Who Submit is one of those adult book spaces, right? Like we're in that, but like some of us are also members of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and there isn't necessarily a society of people who write for adult books, I think, because that is assumed to be the default. But I don't know, can any of the three of you speak to like other, Women Who Submit is my go-to community, and other workshops I've taken or classes. Can any of the three of you have any other? The Macondo Writers Workshop, I guess, would be my other like really connected writing community. Arojo, the Room of Our Own Foundation community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say it really, if you can find any other kind of just adult writing community space, and there are so many, whether that's through retreats or writing workshops, like I mentioned earlier in Texas, we have Writers League of Texas, we have Macondo. For poets, there's Canto Mundo, Cave Canum, Quiley Journal, Zvona. There's the one with the women writers retreat in the mountains that I've never gotten into. Unfortunately, I can't remember what it's called right now. There's McDowell Colony. That's right. There's all sort of these writing retreat spaces and organizations and groups. And if you can tap into them, even just through their online platforms at first, I'd highly recommend it. I wouldn't say that they're specifically, any that I know of that are specifically just for nonfiction writers. Usually you're looking at nonfiction, fiction sort of together in that same world. But they're for like adult books, adult writers. And so, there's things you can find on pw.org, poetsandwriters.org, that should have links and information to different groups and organizations. As I was saying, Women Who Submit is obviously a great one. And so they're not going to say that they're specifically like, we're here to help you promote, but if you're tapped into those communities and you make those connections, you'll inevitably find people who want to support and share your work. Most of mine have come through things like Canto Mundo, Macondo, Women Who Submit, Vona, my MFA program. Those are the communities that I'm a part of. And so they have been the ones that have helped champion more of my like poetry and nonfiction work.
Yeah, I think you have to just look for a smaller like group. So wherever that is, whether it's Women Who Submit, I've done work for Penn, for the Community Literary Initiative, CLI, who has a great poetry library in South LA. and you know, there's a bunch of different organizations, so it's kind of more finding your people that like are writing in the similar vein as you, or the similar like genre as you, or whatever, or are just writing adult books. It's probably a little bit harder to find that, but because there are so many adult books, and like it's such a broad range, not that children's aren't, but like but you know, it's just going to be probably like a slightly more hard to find. So sorry, that was not an uplifting answer. I apologize.
There's also, just FYI, I know we went to nonfiction, but just real quickly, if you are a genre writer, I know that there's like romance writers groups, mystery writers groups. There's very also genre specific groups that you can find and tap into, maybe even locally. So that's just FYI out there. For nonfiction, there may be specifically like biography or historical. I know if you're thinking about memoir, that's obviously different. But yeah, you kind of have to make Google your friend. And I was going to mention that earlier for all of the things, just like research those book festivals, research those media outlets, research those groups and communities, and just like, I have spreadsheets for everything, y'all. So just create those lists for yourself and see what kind of where you might fit in and who you might like to reach out to. So
Thank you all so much for being here and for all of your insight today. Really appreciate your resources and experience. Those of you who've been part of the audience, can you please fill out the feedback form? Lisa put the link in the chat. And I just want to acknowledge that today's program was made possible by a grant from the California Arts Center. And if you enjoyed the program, please consider making a small donation to Women Who Submit. There is also a link in the chat. Thank you, Julia and Alyssia and Jasmine, and all of you for joining us on Zoom and at the Bob Lucas Library. Have a wonderful Saturday afternoon.